Welcome to today's Explainer. We've got something truly fascinating to unpack together. We are diving into the powerful conclusion of Pastor Noel Sandesh's 5-part sermon series, which was delivered at Crown of Life Ministries over in Bhopal. The series is called The Set Time of God, and this finale, it brings all the pieces together in a way that's just incredibly practical. Whether you're trying to figure out your career path, your family dynamics, or just your own personal goals, the concepts we're exploring today about divine synchronization are absolutely crucial. So let's just jump right in.
So let me ask you a question. Have you ever experienced the absolute sheer frustration of doing the perfectly right thing, making what you knew for a fact was a solid, wise decision, but doing it at the completely wrong moment? You know the feeling. Maybe you launched a business a month before a massive market crash, or maybe you pushed for a relationship exactly when the other person just needed some space. The intent was there, the action was totally right, but the timing? Completely off. It is literally one of the most frustrating human experiences because you feel like you did everything by the book and the whole shebang still fell apart.
Pastor Sandesh actually presents this really fascinating opening dilemma. Think of it like this. On one side, we have going ahead of God's time, basically rushing in with our own impatience. On the flip side, we have God's time going ahead of us, meaning we dragged our feet and completely missed the window. And what's the common result of both? Failure and struggle. It doesn't matter if you're too early or too late. If you are out of sync with divine timing, you just miss the favor and the blessing. The pain of the outcome is exactly the same either way.
All right, so let's look at the secret of Issachar. This is the historical solution to finding that perfect timing.
Let's dive into this incredibly revealing verse from 1 Chronicles. Picture this. There's a massive transition of power happening in ancient Israel. Warriors from all these different tribes are gathering. We're talking tens of thousands of men, fully armed, absolutely incredible fighters. But then you have this tiny group from the tribe of Issachar. Just 200 chiefs. 200. Yet the text says all their relatives were at their command. Why on earth were a mere 200 men leading this massive, heavily armed army? Well, because they were men who understood the times. It wasn't their fighting skills or their fancy weapons that put them in charge. It was their unique, pinpoint understanding of timing.
And according to the sermon, these chiefs of Issachar didn't just get lucky. No way. They mastered 2 very specific steps. And these steps form the exact roadmap we're going to use to find our own divine synchronization. Step 1, discerning everything. Step 2, strategy for everything. It's really that straightforward. You have to know what time it is, and then you have to know exactly what to do about it. Let's break these down, shall we?
Which brings us to our first pillar, discerning the divine will. And spoiler alert, it goes way beyond just right versus wrong.
You know, when we hear the word discernment, we usually jump straight to morality. We think it just means knowing right from wrong. But Pastor Sandesh notes that modern believers rely way too heavily, sometimes even exclusively, on logic, science, and calculation. We make our little spreadsheets, we weigh the pros and cons, and we think that's enough. But discernment isn't simply choosing good over evil. It is specifically knowing the true will of God. The enemy can sometimes present you with what looks like a good opportunity, a great job offer, a really nice investment. But if it isn't God's will for you, it just becomes a trap. Discernment is the key that keeps you out of that trap.
Consider this wild contrast. On one side, we have Peter's logic. Jesus says he has to go to the cross and die. Peter, using perfect human logic and genuine love for his friend, says, "No, Lord, this shall never happen to you." I mean, logically, that's right? But spiritually, it was entirely wrong because it went directly against God's will. Now, on the other side, we have the Apostle Paul in Acts 16. A girl with a fortune-telling spirit is following him for days, shouting, "These men are servants of the Most High God." Factually, she was telling the absolute truth. It was right. But Paul, using his discernment, recognized that the spirit behind the words was demonic, and he cast it out. Discernment looks way past the surface logic to find the true source and the true will.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is this. God will only stand with you when you are in something initiated by God. If we go out and start projects, relationships, or businesses based purely on our own planning and our own logic, without that spiritual discernment, we just cannot expect divine success. We can't initiate something in our own flesh and then turn around and demand that God blesses it. Discernment ensures we are getting in on what God is actually already doing.
Okay, moving on to the second pillar, creating a divine strategy, or basically knowing exactly what Israel should do. Because once you've discerned the timing and the will of God,
You absolutely must have a precise action plan. You need a divine strategy. And here's the cool part. God doesn't do one size fits all. He is the ultimate custom strategist. Think about it. To conquer the massive walled city of Jericho, the strategy wasn't standard siege warfare. It was literally marching in silence for 7 days and blowing some trumpets. Completely unique. For the wicked city of Nineveh to survive judgment, the strategy was radical fasting and wearing sackcloth. They even made the livestock wear sackcloth, which is just a wild mental image. And when Samson's mother found out she was having a special child, she specifically asked God for a strategy, a totally customized parenting plan to raise a chosen child. Different situations, perfectly tailored divine strategies.
Now, I want to bring this right to where you are sitting today. Do you have a God-given strategy for your current situation? If you think it's the right time to start a business, do you actually have His blueprint for it? If you're walking into a job interview or maybe sitting for a massive competitive exam, are you relying solely on your studying or do you have a divine strategy to succeed? Pastor Sandesh points out that this is precisely where we drop the ball. We might sense the right time, sure, but we fail because we haven't secured the actual strategy.
So you might be wondering, okay, how do I actually get this strategy? Well, it's not always a booming voice from the clouds. God uses highly practical channels to deliver these specific blueprints to us today. Primarily, it comes through His Word, but it also comes through the counsel of your pastor. In fact, the source material notes that spiritual counseling is very often just strategic planning for your life. It can come through the wisdom of a relative, or even the guidance of your parents. God can literally use anyone or anything to deliver the exact strategy you need.
This leads us to the culmination of it all, your Kairos moment, synchronizing your decision with the perfect time.
But listen, it all starts with that very first step. You literally cannot strategize your way out of bad discernment. The sermon gives a crystal clear call to action right here. Spend time in prayer to receive the gift of discerning. 1 Corinthians 12:10 lists distinguishing between spirits, or discernment, as a specific actual gift of the Holy Spirit. You have to ask for it. You have to pray for the ability to see past the logical, shiny surface of your life and recognize the invisible will of God at work behind the scenes.
I want to leave you with this final, incredibly provocative thought from Proverbs. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. It seems right. It looks great on paper, the math works out perfectly, but if it's not birthed from divine discernment, it just leads to a dead end. So I have to ask you, is your current path based purely on your own human logic, or have you done the work of Issachar? Have you actively sought the divine timing and the divine strategy? Really think about that as you navigate the big decisions in front of you this week.